It's Friday, September 10th, 2021. My name is John Irving. I want to do a brief introduction to this channel and its purpose, and a little bit about me. I have been guided for months now to share my thoughts and observations and what is coming up for me. And I've been putting it off because a lot of what I want to talk about is very emotional and personal. Some of it's deeply personal. And I have received guidance to do this, and I have spent a lot of time thinking about what I want to talk about and share here. I have a lot of experience with astrology. I've studied astrology commencing, I was first introduced to it in the early 1980s. And I have on and off studied it intensely over the decades and practiced it as well. So I consider myself to be a good astrologer. I also am extremely concerned about environmental issues, particularly climate change. I devoted years of my life to promoting information about climate change and combating disinformation about climate change, to the point where the topic became so depressing that I had to cease and desist from doing that because it was taking a huge toll on me. That's a subject I'll probably go into deeper at a later point in time. But in essence, a lot of the things that were deeply concerning to me and others 15 years ago or more are manifesting now, in fact, more quickly than we had feared at that time. But recently, today, I actually have Chiron exactly conjuncting my ascendant, retrograding back over my ascendant. So it's the second direct exact of 3. So this is a very deeply emotional period for me, where a lot of stuff around wounding is coming up, and I'll go into that further as well. And I also have Saturn transiting retrograding through my 11th house right now. So a lot of my connections and relationships are being pruned, shall we say. And yet, despite all my fears and worries and concerns, like right now, I'm getting strong chills about doing this. I'm a little concerned about being overly emotional here, but I think what I have decided and what has become clear to me to do is to just share what's coming up for me and what I'm going through, because I've spent many, many, many years and countless hours in spiritual practice of various forms. I have, of course, done a lot of meditation. I've gone on retreats. I just finished a 10-month hermitage in the woods, off-grid, basically. I have done a lot of Kundalini yoga. I've done a lot of Kriya yoga. I have studied with Mystery School. I've been initiated into various disciplines. And, of course, I'm not a spring chicken, so, maybe there's some things I can share with other people. Again, strong chills, who are going through similar kinds of experiences, and that my sharing might be helpful to those people. One of the things that's really up for me right now, and it may be particular to me because of the astrological transits I just described, is I'm feeling this. A lot of people have been talking about this timeline split that's occurring now, and I have been feeling that myself now. I've sensed it been coming on for years, but I'm feeling it more intensely these days, where there's a lot of people I love, and I want to connect with them, but I'm unable to connect with them in the way that I desire, on the depth of what I desire, because I'm very woo-woo. to use that term. And, there's been a few people that I can connect with on a level that I want to connect with, but not many, just a few. And so there's this separation that's going on, right? Where a lot of us are being called to higher dimensions, to express higher dimensions of quote unquote reality. And, I myself experience at times very high states of what I would call consciousness or awareness. And I waver, I go back and forth between being in those states of heightened awareness and, also having to sort of chop wood and carry water, be in the real world and conduct my affairs and, take care of my business and all of that stuff, right? So, but the part of me that really sings and the part of me that is called is the higher part of myself. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of ways yet to connect that part of myself to this world. And yet that is this rebirthing process that the planet is going through. And I suspect that in the future, it'll be easier to connect in that way with people. But right now, it's quite rare. And that can be sad because, of course, especially with people we love, we want to connect and share who we really are with them in a very deep way. And there doesn't seem to be many opportunities to do that. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of people experiencing this, especially now with Saturn retrograding. And there's a lot of retrograde planets right now, a whole slew of retrograde planets. I should have a chart open in front of me while I'm discussing this. So Jupiter's retrograde, Saturn's retrograde, Uranus is retrograde, Neptune is retrograde, Pluto is retrograde, Chiron is retrograde. So, that's one thing, this need or desire to connect these higher aspects of ourselves and share that experience with other people. And, spirit is always there, right? But we sort of bridge the three-dimensional reality with the higher dimensions of reality. And we have one foot sort of in both realities. And, the human part of us, the physical part of us, the physical being part of us, has this desire to connect. And what I experience or have been experiencing is that when I've tried to share that part of myself with people, and it's difficult because, if you talk too much about spiritual matters to people who aren't really familiar with that, the experience of reality, their perceptions of you can vary from thinking you're crazy to just not being able to really understand what you're trying to share with them. So that's one thing. And then there's another thing that sort of is up for me today, which is, I have Jupiter and Chiron in the 12th in Pisces, in the 12th house in Pisces. And I have a balsamic moon, which means that I was born just before the new moon, which suggests that I am completing a karmic cycles of lifetimes and about to be reborn in a new way, presumably on a new dimensionally in a new way. And so with 12th house energies or something like a balsamic moon, your lifetime involves a lot of letting go, right? So in the past and historically, the 12th house was considered negative in a lot of ways because it was the house of quote unquote undoing, right? And I have a tremendous amount of compassion for 12th house people, Pisces as well, or people with a strongly placed Neptune, because they are being asked to let go of a lot of things. And, our society and the world that we live in is all about creating things. It's very masculine energy of putting things out there and making things happen in the world and being noticed and seen and recognized and all of that stuff. Whereas the 12th house is about letting go, in particular on a higher, all of these energies can manifest on lower dimensions or higher dimensions, depending on the state of evolution of the person in question. But if you're a more evolved being or an older soul, whatever you want to call it, the 12th house or Pisces, those aspects I described, involves a lot of letting go. And letting go can be very difficult depending on how egoically we are attached to aspects of reality, relationships, ways of being, states of being, etc. And so this is one of the things about the spiritual path that I don't think is fully appreciated or understood. It's like it's said that we go out onto the wheel of karma, and about the halfway point through our incarnational cycle, which could take thousands of lifetimes, we start coming back to source. And as we pass the halfway mark of the karmic cycle, it's about undoing versus doing. So, a lot of highly evolved souls, I'm still getting a lot of strong chills here as well. And chills to me are just an energetic sensation or an affirmation that what I'm saying is important or resonates. Truth. A lot of highly evolved souls are here to let go of their attachments, their egoic attachments, their false beliefs, their limiting beliefs, their false identities, and so forth. And that can be very difficult and very challenging. So a lot of people who incarnate with difficult life experiences, what a lot of us would say are difficult life experiences, are actually highly evolved souls and beings who should be supported, which is exactly contrary to the way society tends to treat those individuals. We have it completely ass backwards. An old spiritual teacher of mine said that some of the most highly evolved souls on the planets are people living on the streets, beggars, because they are here learning to be completely trust in the universe. And we disdain and ostracize and ridicule these people. So, if you're somebody who is going through or has had a lot of difficult experiences, you shouldn't be beating yourself up about it. And then there's all the other side of the coin is, there's a lot of this, quote unquote, spiritualism that pertains to manifesting all of these things that you desire, right? And I believe it was the Buddha who said that desire is the root of all suffering. Because that karma is unfulfilled desires, which is what keeps us coming back here. These beliefs that somehow our identity is wrapped up in who we are or what we have or how beautiful we are or how much money we have or how successful or powerful we have, when in fact the truth about spiritual evolution and spiritual growth is that it's a process of undoing and letting go of all of those very things that our society it wants us to, or programs us, or all this propaganda around materialism. So that's another thing that I think needs to be understood. So like, for example, myself, ever since I was a child, I have never understood, for example, celebrity culture and the worship of other people and fixations on that. How people vicariously live through others who seem to represent or manifest the ideals that they desire. So basically, this is just a nod to those who have incarnated into challenging life experiences, that you are actually a brave, very brave soul who chose difficult incarnation to learn difficult lessons, and that letting go is the hardest thing. This is the internal work. In the past, I was the CEO of a high-tech company. I had at one time over 80 employees and contractors. I was very good at it. I took I my company survived the dot-com meltdown when 9 out of 10 companies in the city at the time went under. I practically killed myself to do that, working extraordinarily hard under it was like hand-to-hand combat. So I have experienced all of those things that go along with being in that kind of a position. And I've also experienced a lot of loss and a lot of suffering. And the loss and suffering, let me go back to the point. Sorry. I wanted to state that because I want people to understand that I'm not just speculating. A lot of this comes from personal experience. Is that when you experience loss or pain or grief or suffering, those experiences are supporting you in showing you where your attachments are and what you need to let go of, your false and limiting beliefs. And that the answer isn't just to manifest more crap. I mean, you can do that if you want, but that isn't necessarily what your soul came here to achieve. And I just think I wanted to express these kinds of things because there's a lot of what I see as a sort of spiritual materialism that goes on, and a lot of reinforcement about things like, people's looks and people's status. And we tend to focus a lot on people who are, on the covers of magazines and who are making news and so forth. We give them a lot of our energy and a lot of our focus, even though they are not necessarily highly evolved beings. They're not bad. We're all beings are good. We're all on a continuum somewhere. I'm just basically saying that sometimes it's the weakest members of society that deserve, not sometimes, basically always, these are the people that deserve our support and our love. And that are, by focusing a lot of our attention on people who, and a lot of our energies, psychically and otherwise, on people who typify the opposite, is a bit of a mistake or an error, or it's least unnecessary. So this is kind of some of the stuff that I want to talk about, and my plan is to just do it as things come up for me, which is why I titled this channel Aquarian Diary, rather than just approach it in some kind of structured way. There's a lot of things I could talk about, technical things about astrology, spiritual work and progress. There's a lot of spiritual practice and work that I have done, at times up to 4 or 5 hours a day of spiritual work for extended periods of time. There's a lot of those kinds of things I could share, but I think what I want to do is just approach this intuitively and as things come up. And the main theme right now is letting go, and releasing and supporting these people who are going through difficult things. So don't judge yourself. Don't judge yourself if you are somebody who's going through difficult things. I think what you want to do is reflect on, what is the lesson in what you're going through? What false beliefs do you identify with? What limiting beliefs do you identify with? And of course, regular spiritual practice like meditation, however that looks like for you, can assist you in doing with that. So this is my first attempt at this. Mercury is in its retrograde shadow It's kind of an odd time for an astrologer to start something, but this has just been coming up for me a lot lately, and I felt like it was time to, well, I basically was told to just do it. So I hope this resonates with some of you. It's a bit of a ramble right now because I'm a little nervous about doing this for the first time, and I'm not 100% sure where to begin, but I trust that it'll unfold in a way that is, I hope, very sincerely helpful to others. And I would also like to, I have a lot of experience in building community. I had one of the first social media companies on the internet before Facebook. So I also have a lot of background. I was a CTO as well, or Chief Technology Officer, so I was kind of the technical visionary for the company I mentioned before. And so there's and I also published a New Age magazine back for several years, a regional magazine in Atlantic Canada. It covered 4 provinces for a few years. And the intent of that magazine was also to connect people within the spiritual community, which it did. So I have a background in that as well, which is creating communities. And I have a bunch of ideas and thoughts about that, and that's something else that maybe might be connected to this in some way. Right now I'm just operating on trust and faith, and I hope this resonates with some of you. And blessings. God, blessings to all of those who are going through challenges. Our society is only as strong as the weakest members of it. And until we deal with that, we ourselves will be limited in our potential. We have to bring everyone forward with us, not just the people at the top, but most importantly, the people at the bottom. This also raises another peeve of mine, which is people who are producing spiritual content, whether it's channeled or whatever, and not making it available to everybody. There's billions, literally billions of people on this planet who can barely afford to eat much. And I don't really understand how spiritual knowledge or wisdom or important information shouldn't be made available to those people as well. I do understand that people have to pay bills and survive, but there should be provisions of some sort, or information and knowledge should be made available to every seeker on the planet. I think that would be the will of Source. Source does not discriminate in love, one iota. Doesn't matter who or what they are or what situation or position they're in. God does not discriminate. And I'm going to be using the word God sometimes because I don't have hang-ups about it. If you do, substitute Source. It's just a short way of saying the source of all things, or the creator, or whatever. I don't have religious hang-ups about the word God. Anyway, this is a beginning. I trust that you are on your path, and that whether reality is manifesting for you in a way you would describe pleasant or not, that it's fruitful and beneficial. God bless you all.